Umuulan. Hindi lang basta ulan, bagyo ang bagsak. Kitang-kita sa salamin ng itim na Mercedes-Benz ni Elon Villacruz ang pagragasa ng tubig. He was heading back to his condo after grueling meeting about Aurelia Group's latest acquisition, another tech startup gobbled up by his ever-expanding empire. He was tired, more than usual. The deals, the pressures, the constant performance. It all felt like a suffocating weight. Huminto ang sasakyan sa isang kanto sa Girgis. Santa Verena. Not because he wanted to, but because his driver, Mang Tonyo, had spotted something. Sir, tignan niyo po. Baka kailangan ng tulong. Elon sighed, you weary sound that barely registered above the drumming rain. He looked. Under the flickering, hallowed glow of a street lamp, a woman was slumped against a sari-sari store. She was drenched, shivering, and clearly intoxicated. Lesenga, muttered Mang Tonyo, with a Filipino sense of weary resignation. Elon, however, saw something else. Beyond the disheveled appearance, the wet hair plastered to her face, there was a vulnerability. A fragility that resonated with something deep inside him, something he usually kept locked away. Bumaba ka, Tonyo. Tignan mo kung okay lang siya. Mang Tonyo, hesitant but obedient, alighted from the car. After a brief exchange, he returned, shaking his head. Sir, lasing nga po. Hindi ko maintindihan ang sinasabi. Parang gusto na matulog dyan. Elon knew he should just tell Tonyo to leave her be. Someone would eventually help. It wasn't his problem. He had a board meeting at Pitudad, but he couldn't. He got out of the car, the cold rain instantly soaking through his expensive suit. He approached the woman cautiously. She looked up at him, her eyes unfocused and watery. Okay ka lang? He asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. She blinked slowly. Hindi masyado. Her Tagalog was slurred, but understandable. Inaantok ako. May bahay ka ba? Elon inquired. She shook her head, a single tear tracing a path through the rain-streaked makeup on her cheek. Wala. Oh, hindi ko alam. Elon sighed. He couldn't leave her here. Not tonight. Tonyo, dalhin mo siya sa kondo ko. Sa Valverde. Pakitawagan mo si Manang Ising, sabihin mo na may bisita ako. Mang Tonyo stared at him, clearly shocked. Sir, sigurado po kayo. Elon met his driver's gaze. There was firmness in his eyes that brooked no argument. Gawin mo ang sinabi ko, Tonyo. He carefully helped the woman into the car. She mumbled something about being sorry, then promptly passed out. Elon watched her, a strange mix of annoyance and concern swirling within him. He didn't know who she was, or why she was in such a state. All he knew was that, for reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't just leave her to the storm. He felt something familiar, maybe it was loneliness. Her name, he would later learn, was Janine. A freelance illustrator with high-functioning autism, whose carefully constructed world had crumbled that night after a particularly brutal argument with her mother. An argument that had left her feeling unlovable. The drink was supposed to numb the pain. It hadn't worked. Little did she know, the stranger who had rescued her was not just a kind Samaritan, but one of the most influential men in the Philippines. And that this unlikely encounter would change both their lives in ways they couldn't possibly imagine. Janine woke up with a throbbing headache and a profound sense of disorientation. The room was unfamiliar, sleek, modern, and overwhelmingly beige. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It was far too clean, far too Expensive to be her own. Panic flared. Where was she? What had happened? She sat up abruptly, instantly regretting the movement as a wave of nausea washed over her. She was wearing an oversized shirt, soft and worn. Definitely not hers. Oh God, she muttered, burying her face in her hands. Ano nang ginawa ko? Memories flickered, disjointed images of rain, flashing lights, a blurry face. A kind voice. Nothing concrete. She stumbled out of bed and towards the door. The apartment was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioner. She wandered through the living room, her anxiety escalating with each step. Everything was so curated. Abstract art hung on the walls, minimalist furniture dotted the space, and a panoramic view of the city sprawled outside. Then she saw it on the sleek glass coffee table, next to a stack of design magazines, were her sketches. Not her finished illustrations, but the quick, gestural drawings she did to warm up. She had no recollection of drawing them last night. Next to the sketches was a note, written in neat, elegant script, Manang icing left breakfast for you. Feel free to stay until you feel better. Elon. Elon. That name. It triggered the vague memory of the blurry face from last night. But who was he? Just then, Manang Icing, the kindly-looking woman with a warm smile, entered the living room carrying a tray. Ah, gising ka na pala, Hija. Kumusta ang pakiramdam mo? Janine blushed, mortified. Okay na po. Sino po si Elon? Manang Icing chuckled. Siya ang amo ko. Siya ang nagdala sa'yo dito kagabi. Umuulan kasi at lasing ka raw. Janine's cheeks burned even hotter. Nako, nakakahiya po. Saan po siya? May trabaho po. Siya ng Aurelia Group, alam mo ba? Pero huwag kang mag-alala, mabait yun. Silyu. Aurelia Group. The name was vaguely familiar. Something about tech and billions. The pieces started to fall into place, forming a picture that was both embarrassing and terrifying. She, Janine, the struggling freelance artist with crippling social anxiety and a penchant for emotional outbursts, had been rescued by a powerful, wealthy C. And now she was sitting in his luxurious condo, wearing his clothes. Kailangan ko nang umalis, she mumbled, grabbing her bag. Kumain ka muna, Hija. Naghanda ako ng almusal. Janine hesitated. She was starving. And Manang Icing's kind eyes were strangely comforting. Sige po, she said softly. As she ate, she tried to piece together what had happened. The argument with her mother, the overwhelming feeling of inadequacy, the desperate attempt to drown her sorrows in alcohol. It was all a blur. The apartment door opened. Janine froze, her heart pounding. Elon Villacruz stood in the doorway, looking impossibly handsome in a perfectly tailored suit. He looked tired, but his eyes held a surprising warmth. Good morning, he said, his voice deep and calm. How are you feeling? Janine stared at him, speechless. He was even more intimidating in the daylight. Ugh. Okay na po, she stammered. Salamat po sa lahat. Don't mention it. I'm just glad you're all right. He paused, his gaze lingering on her. I like your sketches. Janine blushed again. Ah, yun ba? Hindi naman yun importante. Elon smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile. As think they are. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. Janine felt a strange pull towards him, sense of calm she hadn't experienced in a long time. But she also felt a profound sense of unease. She didn't belong here. She didn't belong in his world. Kailangan ko nang umalis, she said, standing up abruptly. I can have Tonyo drive you home, Elon offered. Hindi na po. Kaya ko na. She practically fled from the apartment, leaving Elon standing there, thoughtful expression on his face. He looked at the sketches she had left behind. Simple lines, capturing raw emotion. He saw in them a glimpse of something real, something authentic. He didn't know why he had helped her. He didn't usually get involved in situations like this. But something about her vulnerability, her quiet desperation, had resonated with him. And he knew, somehow, that this wasn't the last he would see of Janine. Weeks passed. Janine tried to forget about Elon Villacruz. She focused on her work, burying herself in commissions and personal projects. She told herself it was a one-time thing, a bizarre anomaly. A rich man rescuing a damsel in distress. A story that would never be repeated. She was wrong. She was at an art exhibit in San Rafael, a small, up-and-coming gallery showcasing the work of local artists. She'd been invited by a friend, another struggling artist who believed Janine needed to network. Networking was Janine's worst nightmare. The forced smiles, the meaningless small talk. It all felt like a performance she wasn't equipped to give. She was hiding in a corner, pretending to be engrossed in a particularly abstract painting, when she heard a familiar voice. So, what do you think? Janine jumped, startled. Elon Villacruz stood beside her, looking impossibly elegant in a dark suit. Ikaw, she blurted out, then immediately cringed. I mean... Hello po. Elon smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. Hello, Janine. Didn't expect to see you here. Inimbita ako ng kaibigan ko, she mumbled, avoiding his gaze. And what do you think of the exhibit? He asked, gesturing towards the painting she had been pretending to admire. Janine hesitated. She hated small talk. She hated pretending to like things she didn't. To be honest, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's calculated. Elon raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Calculated. Yeah. Like the artist is trying too hard to be profound. It's technically proficient, but it lacks. So. She winced, realizing how blunt she sounded. Sorry. Instead of being offended, Elon chuckled. No, I appreciate your honesty. Most people just say it's interesting. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the room. I actually have a piece in this exhibit. Janine's eyes widened in surprise. Talaga? Which one? Elon pointed to a large, monochromatic painting depicting cityscape. It was technically brilliant, meticulously detailed, and undeniably impressive. That one, he said. Janine studied the painting for a long moment. It was beautiful, undoubtedly. But it's very precise, she said carefully. Almost sterile. Elon's expression didn't change. You don't like it, see? Janine took a deep breath. It's technically perfect. But it feels cold. Like you're afraid to let go, to show any emotion. She braced herself for his reaction. She expected anger, dismissal, or at least polite disagreement. Instead, Elon simply nodded. You might be right. He turned to her, his eyes searching hers. Tell me, Janine. What would you have done differently? And so began an unexpected conversation. Janine, awkward but brutally honest, dissected Elon's painting, pointing out its strengths and weaknesses. She spoke about color theory, composition, and the importance of conveying emotion through art. She talked about her own work, her struggles, her passion. Elon listened intently, his gaze never wavering. He was fascinated by her insights, her unique perspective. He saw in her raw talent, a genuine artistic vision that was both captivating and unsettling. As they talked, he began to understand a little more about Janine. He learned about her routines, her sensory sensitivities, her struggles with social interaction. He learned about her high-functioning autism, a condition that made navigating the world a constant challenge. But he also saw her strength, her resilience, her unwavering commitment to her art. He saw a woman who was fiercely independent, deeply intelligent, and utterly unique. "You're a very talented artist, Janine," he said sincerely. Janine blushed, embarrassed by the compliment. "Hindi naman. I'm just different." Elon smiled. "Maybe that's what makes you so good." He paused, then added, "Would you be interested in grabbing coffee sometime? I'd like to hear more about your work." Janine hesitated. The thought of spending more time with Elon Villacruz was both exciting and terrifying. He was wealthy, powerful, and sophisticated. She was Janine. "I don't know," she mumbled. "I'm not very good at social things." Elon's eyes softened. "We don't have to be social. We can just talk about art." Janine considered his offer. She was drawn to him despite her reservations. There was something about his quiet intensity, his genuine curiosity, that intrigued her. "Okay," she said softly. "Coffee sounds okay." Elon smiled, the genuine, warm smile that made her heart skip a beat. "Great. I'll call you." As he walked away, Janine couldn't help but wonder what she had gotten herself into. She was venturing into a world that was completely foreign to her, a world of wealth, power, and privilege. But she was also venturing into something else. Something that felt real. Something that felt promising. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The coffee meetings turned into long walks along the baybayin shoreline of Isla de Clara, secluded island where Elon owned beach house. The island was his sanctuary, a place where he could escape the pressures of his corporate life and reconnect with himself. Janine initially felt awkward and out of place in Elon's world. The beach house was luxurious, the staff was attentive, and the entire atmosphere was one of understated elegance. She was used to cramped studios, late-night deadlines, and instant noodles for dinner. This was a different universe. But Elon was patient and understanding. He didn't pressure her to be someone she wasn't. He didn't judge her quirks or decide to fix her. He simply accepted her as she was. One afternoon, as they were walking along the beach, Janine had a panic attack. The sound of the waves, the bright sunlight, and the sheer number of people on the beach all combined to overwhelm her senses. She started to hyperventilate, her heart pounding in her chest. Elon immediately recognized the signs. He gently guided her away from the crowd and towards a secluded spot under a palm tree. He sat beside her, not touching her, but offering his presence as a silent anchor. "Breathe, Janine," he said softly. "Just breathe." He waited patiently, allowing her to ride out the wave of anxiety. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer unsolicited advice. He simply stayed with her, his presence silent reassurance. After a few minutes, the panic subsided. Janine took deep breath, her body trembling. Salamat, she whispered. Elon smiled gently. Okay ka na? Janine nodded. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to. It's okay, Elon interrupted. I understand. He paused, then added, You know, you can tell me anything, Janine. I won't judge you. And so, slowly, tentatively, Janine began to open up to Elon. She told him about her autism, her struggles with social interaction, her fear of intimacy. She told him about her dreams, her aspirations, her insecurities. Elon listened intently, his eyes filled with compassion. He didn't pretend to understand everything, but he made genuine effort to learn. He researched autism, read articles and books, and talked to experts. He wanted to understand Janine, not just as an artist, but as a person. You know, he said one evening, as they were sitting on the veranda of the beach house, watching the sunset, I admire you, Janine. You're one of the most authentic people I've ever met. Janine blushed, embarrassed by the compliment. I'm just different. No, Elon insisted. You're real. You don't tear aside to be someone you're not. That's rare. He reached out and gently took her hand. His touch was warm, comforting, and surprisingly gentle. Janine's heart skipped a beat. She had never felt this way before. She was drawn to Elon, not just because of his kindness and understanding, but because of something deeper. Something that felt like connection. But she was also afraid. Afraid of getting hurt, afraid of being rejected, afraid of not being good enough. So don't know, Elon, she said softly. I'm not sure I'm capable of this. Elon squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to be anything you don't want to be, Janine. Just be yourself. He paused, then added, and if you're willing to give it a chance, I'd like to get to know you better. Janine looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of insincerity. She saw nothing but honesty and warmth. Okay, she said softly. I'm willing to tirusai. In that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the air in hues of orange and purple, Janine knew that she was falling in love with Elon Villacruz. A man who saw beyond her limitations, a man who appreciated her quirks, a man who loved her for who she was. But she also knew that this love was fragile, precarious. She was venturing into uncharted territory, a world where she didn't know the rules. And she was terrified of getting lost. The idyllic bubble Janine and Elon had created on Isla de Clara was about to burst. One evening, as they were having dinner at a small restaurant in Manila, a familiar face appeared. Andrew, Janine's ex-boyfriend. He was a successful gallery owner, charismatic and ambitious. He was also the reason Janine had sworn off relationships for a long time. Andrew had broken up with her, citing her emotional baggage as the reason. He couldn't handle her anxiety, her meltdowns, her differentness. He wanted someone who was easier to be with. Janine, Andrew said, his voice smooth and charming. Is that really you? Janine froze, her heart sinking. She hadn't seen Andrew in years. She had tried to erase him from her memory. Andrew, she said, her voice barely audible. Andrew approached the table, his eyes lingering on Elon. Who's this? This is Elon, Janine said, her voice tight. Elon, this is Andrew. Elon extended his hand, his expression polite but guarded. Nice to meet you. Andrew shook his hand, his gaze appraising. So, you're the lucky guy. He turned back to Janine, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and admiration. I've been following your work, Janine. You've really blossomed. Janine bristled. Leave me alone, Andrew. Come on, Janine, Andrew persisted. Can we talk? I want to explain things. There's nothing to explain, Janine said, her voice rising. You made your choice. Andrew sighed. I made a mistake. I was young, I was stupid. Didn't appreciate what I had. He paused, his eyes pleading. I want to make it up to you, Janine. I want another chance. Janine stared at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You can't just waltz back into in my life and expect me to forgive you. You broke my heart, Andrew. I know, and I'm sorry, Andrew said, his voice sincere. Please, just give me a chance to prove that I've changed. Elon watched the exchange, his jaw tight. He didn't like the way Andrew was looking at Janine. He didn't like the way he was talking to her. He reached out and took Janine's hand, his touch possessive. Janine, we should go. Janine nodded, relieved to have an excuse to escape. Yeah, let's go. As they walk away, Andrew called out, I'll be in touch, Janine. Janine ignored him, her heart pounding in her chest. She hated that Andrew had reappeared in her life. She hated that he had the power to disrupt her peace. Are you okay? Elon asked, his voice concerned. Janine nodded, but she knew she wasn't. Andrew's appearance had stirred up old wounds, old insecurities. She was afraid that he was right. She was afraid that she was too much trouble, too much baggage. The next few days were tense. Andrew kept calling and texting Janine, begging her to meet him. Janine refused, but his persistence was unsettling. Elon, though not outwardly demonstrative, was clearly jealous. He held Janine closer, kissed her more passionately, and made sure to spend every possible moment with her. One evening, as they were sitting on the veranda of the beach house, Janine finally confronted Elon. Are you jealous? She asked, her voice hesitant. Elon hesitated, then nodded. Yes. I don't like him being around you. Janine smiled slightly. You don't have to worry. I'm not going back to him. Elon looked relieved. I know. But I'm just afraid of losing you. Janine reached out and took his hand. You're not going to lose me. She paused, then added, but you need to trust me, Elon. You need to trust that, know what I want. Elon nodded, his eyes filled with love and vulnerability. Do trust you, Janine. I care about you so much. Janine leaned in and kissed him, a long, lingering kiss that conveyed all the emotions she couldn't express in words. She loved Elon deeply and completely. She knew that he was the right person for her. But she also knew that the relationship was still fragile. They were both carrying baggage, both dealing with insecurities. They needed to trust each other, to communicate openly, and to be willing to work through their challenges. And she was willing to do whatever it took to make their love last. Even if it meant facing the ghosts of her past. Even if it meant confronting her deepest fears. Because she knew that with Elon by her side, she could overcome anything. The breaking point came swiftly and unexpectedly. Aurelia Group announced a new TSA, Corporate Social Responsibility, project, an art therapy program for underprivileged children with special needs. Janine's name was prominently featured as key consultant and inspiration for the project. The media went wild. Headlines screamed about Elon Villacruz's compassionate heart and his commitment to social responsibility. Photos of Elon and Janine together flooded the internet, portraying them as the perfect power couple, using their influence to make positive impact on the world. Janine was horrified. She hadn't been consulted about the project. She hadn't given her consent to be used as a AI tool. She felt like a puppet, pawn in Elon's corporate game. She confronted him, her voice trembling with anger. How could you do this, Elon? You used me. Elon looked confused. What are you talking about? This project. Janine exclaimed, waving newspaper in his face. You made me the face of it without even asking me. It's like I'm just a charity case, pet project for you to show off your good deeds. Elon's expression darkened. That's not true, Janine. I wanted to support your work. I thought it would be a good opportunity for you. A good opportunity for you. Janine retorted. To improve your image, to boost your company's reputation. You don't care about me, you just care about what can do for you. That's not fair, Janine, Elon said, his voice rising. I care about you deeply. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. Really? Janine challenged. Then ever didn't you ask me? Else did you make this decision without consulting me? It's like you don't respect me, like you don't think the opinion matters. Elon sighed, running key hand through his hair. I messed up, okay. I was trying to do something good, but didn't think it through. I'm sorry. Janine stared at him, her eyes filled with hurt and disappointment. I don't believe you. What? Elon said, shocked. I don't believe that you actually care about me, Janine repeated. I think you're just using me, like everyone else. Elon's face fell. That's not true, Janine. I love you. Janine shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the quirky artist with autism who makes you look good. But you don't actually love me. She turned and walked away, leaving Elon standing there, his heart shattered. He watched her go, knowing that he had made a terrible mistake. He had let his desire to protect and provide for Janine cloud his judgment. He had treated her like a fragile object, instead of a strong, independent woman. He knew he had to fix things. He had to convince Janine that he truly loved her, that he valued her as a person, not just as a asset. But he also knew that it wouldn't be easy. He had broken her trust, and trust was the hardest thing to earn back. Janine packed her bags and left Isla de Clara. She couldn't stay there, surrounded by reminders of Elon and their broken promises. She needed to escape, to find herself again. She returned to her small apartment in Manila, feeling lost and alone. She tried to focus on her work, but her heart wasn't in it. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had been betrayed, that she had been used. She received a call from Ander, who had seen the news about the Aurelia Group project. He offered his support, his sympathy, and a shoulder to tear on. Janine hesitated. She knew that Andrew was still interested in her. She knew that he would be happy to see her relationship with Elon fall apart. But she also knew that she needed someone to talk to, someone who understood her pain. Okay, she said softly. I'll meet you for coffee. As she hung up the phone, she couldn't help but wonder if she was making a mistake. Was she running back to the past, to a relationship that had already failed? Or was she simply seeking comfort in a familiar place? She didn't know. All she knew was that she was hurting and she needed someone to help her heal. Janine didn't go back to Manila. Instead, she found herself drawn back to Isla de Clara, but not to Elon's luxurious beach house. She rented a small cottage on the other side of the island, far away from the tourist resorts and the bustling activity. She needed solitude, chance to reconnect with herself and her art. She started painting again, channeling her pain and anger into her work. She painted landscapes, portraits, and abstract compositions, each piece a reflection of her inner turmoil. She also reconnected with her young cousin, Poch, who had Down syndrome. Poch was a ray of sunshine in her life, a reminder of the simple joys and unconditional love that existed in the world. Poch loved to draw, and Janine encouraged him to express himself through art. Together, they created a small studio in her cottage, filled with paints, brushes, and canvases. Janine realized that she wanted to use her art to make a difference in the lives of others. She wanted to create a space where people with disabilities could express themselves creatively, without judgment or limitations. She started teaching art classes to children with special needs, using her own experiences to guide and inspire them. She found that teaching was incredibly rewarding, a way to give back to the community and to find meaning in her own struggles. Meanwhile, Elon was devastated by Janine's departure. He knew he had messed up badly, and he was determined to win her back. He resigned from his position as CEO of Aurelia Group, realizing that his corporate life was stifling his creativity and preventing him from being the person he wanted to be. He wanted to focus on his art, on his relationships, and on making a positive impact on the world. He sold his shares in the company and used the money to fund a community art program on Isla de Clara, anonymously donating the funds through a foundation. He made sure that Janine was put in charge of the program, giving her the autonomy and resources she needed to pursue her passion. He didn't contact Janine directly. He knew that she needed space, that she needed time to heal. He respected her boundaries, even though it was agonizing to stay away from her. He watched her from afar, admiring her strength, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to her art. He saw her transform from an insecure artist into a confident, compassionate leader. He knew that he had made a mistake, but he also knew that he had learned from it. He had learned the importance of trust, respect, and communication. He had learned that love was not about control or possession, but about supporting and empowering the person you love. He was willing to wait, to be patient, and to earn Janine's forgiveness. He knew that she was worth fighting for, that she was the love of his life. He just hoped that she would eventually give him another chance. Months passed. Janine's art studio flourished. Word spread about her unique teaching methods and her ability to connect with children with special needs. The studio became a haven, a place where creativity thrived and differences were celebrated. One day, Janine received a letter from the foundation that was funding her program. The letter informed her that the anonymous donor wanted to meet with her personally to discuss the future of the program. Janine was curious and a little apprehensive. She had always wondered who was behind the generous donation. She traveled to Manila and met with the foundation's director, a kind, elderly woman who smiled warmly. "Janine, it's so wonderful to finally meet you," the director said. "The donor has been following your work with great admiration." "Thank you," Janine said. "I'm so grateful for their support." "Well, they're eager to meet you," the director said. "They're waiting for you in the next room." Janine took a deep breath and walked into the next room. She gasped when she saw who was waiting for her. Elon Villacruz stood beside the window, his back to her. He turned around when he heard her enter, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. "Janine," he said softly. Janine stared at him, speechless. "You," she whispered. "You're the donor." Elon nodded. Yes. I wanted to support your work, but didn't want you to feel obligated to me. Janine's mind raced. She was overwhelmed with a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, gratitude, and something else. Something that felt like forgiveness. Well, she asked, her voice trembling. Elif, didn't you tell me? I was afraid, Elon admitted. I was afraid that you wouldn't accept the help, that you would think I was trying to control you. He paused, then added, just wanted you to be happy, Janine. Even if it meant staying away from you. Janine's anger began to subside, replaced by a wave of tenderness. She realized that Elon's actions, though misguided, had been motivated via love. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for supporting the work. It means a lot to me. Elon smiled, relieved. You're welcome. You deserve all the support in the world. He hesitated, then added, can we talk, Janine? I want to explain everything. Janine nodded. Okay. But there's something I need to tell you first. She took a deep breath and confessed her deepest fear. I'm afraid of getting hurt, Elon. I'm afraid of not being good enough. I'm afraid that I'm too much trouble. Elon's eyes softened. You're not too much trouble, Janine. You're perfect, just the way you are. He paused, then added, and I know what it's like to be afraid. I have anxiety, Janine. I've been hiding it for years. Janine's eyes widened in surprise. Anxiety. But you're so confident, so successful. Elon chuckled. That's just a facade. Inside, I'm a mess. I'm constantly worried about failing, about disappointing people. I'm afraid of losing control. He paused, then added, that's why I was so controlling with you, Janine. I was afraid of losing you, so I tried to hold on too tight. Janine stared at him, her heart filled with compassion. She realized that Elon was just as vulnerable as she was. He had his own struggles, his own insecurities. I understand, she said softly. I'm afraid too. Elon reached out and took her hand. We can be afraid together, Janine. We can support each other and we can overcome our fears. Janine squeezed his hand, her heart overflowing with love. She realized that she had been wrong about Elon. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. He was honest, vulnerable, and deeply caring. She knew that she wanted to be with him, to face her fears with him, and to build a life together. Okay, she said softly. I want to see you shy again. Elon smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. Me too, Janine. Me too. They reconciled on a simple evening on the beach of Isla de Clara, far from the fancy restaurants and crowded resorts. No grand gestures, just raw conversations under the sky full of stars. They talked for hours, sharing their fears, their insecurities, and their hopes for the future. They apologized for their mistakes, forgave each other, and vowed to communicate more openly. They agreed to take things slowly, to focus on building a foundation of trust and respect. They promised to support each other's dreams, to celebrate each other's successes, and to comfort each other during their struggles. Janine realized that she had been wrong to push Elon away. She had been so afraid of getting hurt that she had closed herself off to the possibility of love. Elon realized that he had been wrong to peer aside to control Janine. He had been so afraid of losing her that he had suffocated her. They both learned that love was not about perfection, but about acceptance. It was about embracing each other's flaws, supporting each other's strengths, and growing together. I'm not perfect, Elon, Janine said, her voice soft. I'm still going to have panic attacks. I'm still going to struggle with social situations. But promise to TRC in the best sea. You don't have to be perfect, Janine, Elon said, his voice gentle. I love you for who you are, flaws and all. And is promised to be patient, understanding, and supportive. He paused, then added, I'm not perfect either, Janine. I'm still going to have moments of anxiety. I'm still going to struggle with control. But promise to work on myself, to be more open and honest with you. Janine leaned in and kissed him, a long, lingering kiss that sealed their commitment to each other. I love you, Elon, she whispered. I love you too, Janine, Elon replied. They didn't promise forever. They knew that life was unpredictable, that challenges would inevitably arise. But they promised to choose each other, every day, to work on their relationship, and to never give up on their love. And in that moment, as they stood hand in hand under the starlit sky, they knew that they had found something truly special. A love that was imperfect, but real. A love that was tested, but strong. A love that was worth fighting for. They returned to Janine's cottage, hand in hand, their hearts filled with hope. They spent the night talking, laughing, and making love. They fell asleep in each other's arms, feeling safe, secure, and deeply content. In the morning, they woke up to the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. They went for a walk on the beach, hand in hand, watching the sunrise. What do you want to do with your life, Janine? Elon asked. I want to keep teaching art, Janine said. I want to expand Eva's studio to reach more children with special needs. I want to create a community where everyone feels welcome and accepted. I want to help you, Elon said. I want to use the resources to support your vision. Thank you, Janine said. But I don't want you to take over. I want to do this on my own. I understand, Elon said. I'll support you in any way I can, but I'll respect your boundaries. He paused, then added, What about me, Janine? What do you want me to do within my life? Janine smiled. I want you to be happy, Elon. I want you to pursue your passions, to create art, to make difference in the world. I want to do all those things, Elon said. But I also want to be with you, Janine. I want to build a life with you. We can do both, Janine said. We can support each other's dreams, and we can build a life together. They stopped walking and turned to face each other. Elon took Janine's hands in his. Janine, he said, his voice sincere. Will you marry me? Janine's eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. Elon smiled and kissed her, a long, passionate kiss that sealed their commitment to each other. They spent the rest of the day making plans for their future. They decided to have a small, intimate wedding on the beach of Isla de Clara, surrounded by their closest friends and family. They decided to continue living in Janine's cottage, but they also bought a small piece of land nearby where they could build a studio and a home. They knew that their life together wouldn't be perfect. They would still face challenges, still have moments of doubt and fear. But they were committed to working through those challenges, to supporting each other, and to never giving up on their love. Because they knew that their love was worth fighting for. The wedding was everything they had hoped for, simple, intimate, and filled with love. Poch, beaming with pride, served as the ring bearer, carefully carrying the rings on a small velvet pillow. Janine's mother, who had finally come to terms with Janine's autism and her relationship with Elon, walked her down the aisle, her eyes filled with tears of joy. Andrew attended the wedding not as a rival, but as a friend. He had apologized to Janine for his past behavior, and she had forgiven him. He wished them well, genuinely happy for their happiness. Janine looked radiant in a simple white dress, her eyes sparkling with joy. Elon looked handsome in a linen suit, his face radiating happiness. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love each other unconditionally, to support each other's dreams, and to never give up on their love. Promise to love you, Janine, for who you are, Elon said, his voice choked with emotion. Promise to be patient, understanding, and supportive. Promise to always listen to you, to always respect your boundaries, and to always cherish you. Promise to love you, Elon, for who you are, Janine said, her voice trembling with emotion. Promise to be honest, vulnerable, and compassionate. Promise to always support your dreams, to always celebrate your successes, and to always comfort you during your struggles. They exchanged rings, symbolizing their eternal commitment to each other. As they kissed, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the air in hues of orange and purple. The waves crashed gently on the shore, creating a soothing soundtrack to their love. They danced the night away under the stars, surrounded by their loved ones. They loved, they cried, and they celebrated their love. In the years that followed, Janine and Elon built a life filled with love, creativity, and compassion. Janine expanded her art studio, creating a community where people with disabilities could express themselves freely. She became a renowned artist, her work celebrated for its honesty, vulnerability, and unique perspective. Elon pursued his passions, creating art that reflected his inner struggles and his hopes for the future. He used his resources to support Janine's work, to advocate for disability rights, and to make a positive impact on the world. They faced challenges, of course. They had moments of doubt, moments of fear. But they always supported each other, always communicated openly, and always chose each other, every day. They proved that love was not about perfection, but about acceptance. It was about embracing each other's flaws, supporting each other's strengths, and growing together. They proved that love could conquer all, even the most daunting challenges. And they lived happily ever after, not in a fairy tale world of perfection, but in a real world of imperfect love, unwavering support, and endless possibilities. From two people who thought they were not meant for each other, they became a married couple who continued to choose each other every day. Tahimik ang puso ko pero narinig mo. In my heart is silent, but you heard it.